So what's the history of this FSI?
Development must take care of the people.
So in Hyderabad, for example, you have unlimited FSI.
If I have TDR, how do I find someone to sell it to? Is there some sort of an exchange?
The government doesn't provide infrastructure.
What would have been obvious is for our cities to have grown vertically.
The real estate prices are actually unreal estate prices.
Somebody tells me you just take this elevator to the 50th floor and that's where the lobby is.
BWSSB must supply meters to every flat.
City like Bangalore, I think the only ideal long-term solution is a metro.
So what is TDR?
If you go to Electronic City, there is no building I have seen which has not violated.
The difference between FSI and FAR is
Estate is always unaffordable, everywhere.
you're one of the few real estate developers who's also an IITian.
Friction among residents is because of water.
So what are the alternatives to FSI?
You have to regulate the regulation. BDA is shackled by its own rules.
Hi Ravi, welcome to the Property Angel
Hi,
podcast.
Sapna. Thank you.
And thank you for joining us here. It's an honor to have you with us.
Thank you very much.
So you are of course one of the most successful developers in Bangalore. You've developed some very successful projects across the city under the Surbacon brand. And you are also very strongly technically inclined. I think you're one of the few real estate developers who's also an IITian. So who better than you to talk to us about the concept of FSI?
There are a few IITians from my college like Kamal Sagar.
Okay.
And we have a very limited scope as builders. We can only do our projects. We cannot dictate terms to the corporation and so on. But we have some ideas which we can share on this.
Sure. So it's great to have you here to talk to us about FSI and its complexities. And FSI is a concept that we think it's important for real estate investors to know about. So let me start by stating the obvious, right? So India today is the most populous country in the world. And we have a relatively small parcel of land. So what would have been obvious is for our cities to have grown vertically like what we see in Shanghai or Tokyo, but that has not happened. And so we know that one of the reasons for that is because we've had a very low FSI. And so if you can help us understand the concept of FSI and why it has been low in India, that would be great.
See, FSI was, I think, introduced in the 50s or early 60s, I'm not sure, maybe 50s, to regulate the construction industry, especially residential and commercial in cities. But I think it's outlived its purpose because things have changed. Population has more than doubled or tripled probably. And one of the fallouts is cost of real estate is very high in places like Bombay, Delhi and all that. Since FSI is only an instrument to regulate, you have to regulate the regulation to keep up with the changing times, which they have not done. That is one. Still, it is not a very effective tool for provision of infrastructure. Because the government doesn't really provide infrastructure in the suburbs, they allow more FSI there. They don't provide water. They don't provide sewage. Electricity, of course, is a universal right, so they do provide. But these fundamentals, but then you have to provide your own genset because you never know when power is going. These problems are not there in many countries. So, the correct yardstick I feel for residential is one based on density per acre depending on which area it is. We have three zones, A, which is the heart of the city, B zone and C zone, which all come under the corporation. Then we have the BDA, outer ring, and beyond that we have the BMRDA and the district rules for other areas. So what has happened is they have actually taken the easy route because they have not concentrated in the center of the city, which is the most valuable land available, right? Those have been built hundreds during the British days and they remain the same. Say, I keep citing the example of Bamboo Bazaar, Chickpet and all those areas, which you have to unlock the value in those areas by having a renewal authority.
So just to understand the concept of FSI means what?
Floor space index. Supposing you have 100 square feet, they say in A zone it may be 1.5, B zone may be 1.75, C zone may be 2.25. It's the ratio of the land area to built up area. So, if it is 1.75 in 100 square feet, you can build 175 square feet.
Okay.
In B zone, if it is 2 or 2.25, you can build 225 square feet and so on. It's a function of zone plus road width.
And the difference between FSI and FAR is?
Both are the same.
But one is a percentage, right?
Both are the same. It's a ratio.
It's a ratio.
Yeah, it's a ratio. It's a multiple or a ratio.
So FAR stands for floor
area ratio. Floor space index.
Yeah, yeah. Now the FSI in New York is 15. In Shanghai, it is about
No, I think it is area wise.
Okay.
See, it depends also on the infrastructure available at that place, at that land parcel or nearby, or the plans to provide infrastructure. Based on that, they will they give the FSI for commercial buildings.
Yeah, yeah.
Commercial buildings means offices basically, because the intensity of land use is not so much in commercial buildings as it is in residential, in terms of water supply, sewage and so on and so forth, right? Garbage disposal.
Yeah.
Commercial buildings, of course, hotels have a large garbage disposal requirement. But generally office spaces, say 100 square feet per person or something. So the main problem would be car park and so on, and electricity if it's air conditioned.
Yeah.
But traffic usually in the heart of the town is served by metros. Nobody takes their cars to work in many of these cities. They all use the metro.
Yes, yes.
So the main mode of transport for office goers in most of the big cities is the metro, which goes into the heart of the city. Therefore, it's very functional, very highly utilitarian, because per square foot, number of people it carries is much more than a vehicle like a car, right? So that's what we should also follow. Center of the city, go for higher density with more intense infrastructure, especially in terms of metros and that power. These are the two things.
Yes, yes.
And make it a little more. So what happens is that maintenance of these will be less, because the road requirement, say for instance that 30 by 40 site was a 30 by 60 site, it double the area, but the road you need to maintain at the same distance, right? 30 feet of road. So tall buildings, you just have a 200 feet frontage, it may be 50 stories, so your maintenance costs are less in that respect.
Exactly.
So your property taxes, everything go a longer way to do proper development and other areas which require attention.
Exactly. Plus, it's much easier to commute vertically. You are simply going up and down.
There are associated problems, fire safety being one of the most important, and of course subject to terrorist attacks as well. But there are so many other issues. So you have to factor in all these things.
Yeah, yeah. But it would solve so many problems. For example, I had gone to Japan a few years ago, and I was looking for a hotel. The cab driver dropped me off and I'm looking for the hotel, not able to find it. And then somebody tells me, you just take this elevator to the 50th floor and that's where the lobby is. So they have multi-purpose
buildings.
Huge,
many buildings in most advanced countries, the first 30 floors may be commercial, then there'll be hotels, then maybe residential, mixed development. Which will come here also soon, but infrastructure gets more complicated if you have residences. But if the metro is serving, even those people use the metro. And many of them who have to attend office may just go down 5 floors or 10 floors to attend office. It's also possible, right? But usually in those areas, residences will be very expensive. There will be guest houses for companies and so on.
True. So what's the solution? I mean, how do we get, if we had to get a city like Bangalore, and you said like the downtown, the commercial areas and all to have.
So we should have a very in-depth analysis of where the city will be, say 50 years from now. Divide the city into grids. Take up every year a few grids to develop, tying in with the overall master plan. Redevelop those areas which need redevelopment, like I keep saying, the center of the town. Redevelop those and put in the new infrastructure. Over a 50-year period, every year there are 100 squares, let's say 100 squares. Every year take up 4 squares. In 25 years, you will have what you want, envisage. But also see that car ownership may come down at some other stage. Maybe, like Uber and other companies may come up, for transport. You may have metros. So you have to factor in that correctly. It's a mathematical problem. Maybe artificial intelligence can solve all this.
Yeah, yeah.
So you must know where you're heading. So fundamentally, I'll tell you, overall, quality of India is going to have 850 to 900 million people living in cities by 2050. We have half of that now. So we need double the number of people to be accommodated in the cities.
Yeah.
That means we have to build a new India with as many cities now in the next 25 years.
We need a lot more cities actually.
It's going to double, right? So we need, if there are 200 cities today, you'll have to build another 200 cities or make each city accommodate twice the number of people.
Yeah.
Therefore, that FSI has to be reviewed. And it's also to be reviewed in conjunction with the traffic. See, people live, of course, offices are also built in the suburbs now. So distance to travel is less. All these factors have to be, put into the cauldron sort of to get
So what would the impact on pricing be? So let's say that if the FSI were to increase and, we did the zoning as you say, and you take a portion of Bangalore and suddenly say the FSI goes from 3 to 10, how does that impact pricing?
It's a little more complicated than just FSI. I was talking about only intensity of land use, provision of infrastructure.
Okay.
The real estate prices are actually unreal estate prices.
Okay.
It is completely not connected with the reality. It's a question of affordability, the depth of the pocket. So if your per capita income increases, these will increase without rhyme or reason.
But today, a lot of real estate is not affordable. And if that was the case, then it should have actually the prices should have been
real
lower,
estate is always unaffordable. Everywhere. Everywhere it is unaffordable. The lucky people are those who beg, borrow, steal in the hope that it'll follow that irrational exuberance principle of the stock market and it'll rise unproportionately or disproportionately. So if you see intrinsic value, finally, of course, God doesn't make land anymore. And we have a huge population. People make more people. So obviously the real estate is like Japan. Japan also real estate prices are very high. Hong Kong, very high. Singapore. So if you have a little more planning more thought given to proper town planning, city planning, that those problems can be mitigated, cannot be solved.
So Hyderabad came up with a solution and said, well, we will have no FSI at all. So
I think Kerala also has something, but has the prices come down there?
That's what I wanted to ask you.
That's why I said it's unreal prices. It is purely a function of perception.
So the prices have not been impacted?
They will not come down.
Okay.
They will not come down because of that. That they are following different paths, Except that what will happen is those places which are better connected, better infrastructure, prices will go up. Like if there's a metro nearby, or if they have water connection, if they have no 24 hours power without failures, which doesn't happen in India. Everywhere there are power cuts. Even in prime places like Koramangala, power goes off for 2-3 hours every now and then.
Absolutely.
So these are infrastructural issues they have to address first.
So when we talk about redoing India like this, right? So now redevelopment. Now we have a gift city is being planned in Gujarat, but the FSI even there is only 3.65. If we had to redo this, why would we have the FSI?
See, it's like this. One of the main problems of very tall buildings is parking.
Okay.
Most flats have two car parks. That's why I said you have to restrict the supply of cars also. If just because you're staying, you can afford 5 cars doesn't mean you're allowed to buy it. There should be a small restriction there.
Okay.
Every family everybody over 21 needs to buy a license for a car park, and he has to show his car parking space before a car can be sold to him. Something like that.
Okay.
There are many ways of controlling, and you must explore all these.
Okay.
Now, supposing you build basically a 4-story building can park 1 vehicle per apartment of say 1000 square feet, or 2 cars in 250 to 300 square feet is 1 car park requirement in the basement. So if it's a 4-story building, there will be 4 flats. So a 1200 square feet flat can park within its footprint 4 cars in the basement. If you go 8, you need double the size of the basement. If you go 12, you need 3 times, and so on and so forth. Every floors, you need 1 more basement, the footprint of the building. if it is say 1200 square feet. If it is 2000 square feet, you may have 3 cars, but you need 900 square feet, right? So you need into 4 is 3600 and so on. Both are variables, yeah.
Yeah, but that doesn't explain. So why would they not have an FSI of, let's say, 10 or 12? I mean, you can have a few floors dedicated to parking.
It's because the traffic generation, their inability to supply the infrastructure, which they don't supply in any case, but you can't have a posh building in the middle of the city without water connection. Whereas in countries like Indonesia, they somehow supply water and they supply to each individual flat. Here, they just connect to your building.
Yeah, true.
The flats don't have connection. They must insist, the BWSSB must supply meters to every flat, because most of the friction among residents is because of water.
Yeah, that's true.
A big flat and a small flat. I'm paying the same thing. I have only 2 people in my flat. I have 5 people. He has 5 people.
It's an issue. So what's the history of this FSI? I mean, how did it come about?
It was a form of regulation where the government controlled the, it all starts with land usage and intensity. What is the capability of the government to provide infrastructure? In those days, they must have had some yardstick to define, but I think it's outmoded now. They must relax the FSI. They have to do a parallel redevelopment. For instance, most of Koramangala first block, second block, you will find 60 by 40 where originally there was 1 household, now has 8.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So what is the point? So what they should do is they can, if you have a corpus, you can acquire say first block for say $2 billion. And each house, 60 by 40 resident, 1 house, you give them 2 houses or 1.5 houses, like what happens in Bombay. Bombay redevelopment, I have a relative who was living in an ordinary flat. He got 2 beautiful flats. The building is 24 stories high. So in the same plot, everybody got a little more, and the builder managed to make both ends meet because he sold the balance units to the market. So what happens is, aesthetically it's more pleasing than the 60 by 40 with violating all the bylaws, coming right up to the street and building, and nobody is looking at it. So FSI is meaningless. If any rule is useless if it's not implemented, right? FSI is one of the biggest casualties. If you go to Electronic City, there is no building I have seen which has not violated. Their FSI is 4 or 6. Even this 20 by 30 site, they build 5 floors, there's a 5 FSI.
Absolutely.
Only commercial people who make money out of building like me, they are watched with hawk eyes.
No, so that was my next question, is how is FSI enforced, right? How well is it enforced?
See, it is basically at the time of plan sanction. So if your FSI and your plan sanction exceeds the allowed FSI, they'll say, no, you have to remove 2 flats or 3 flats. You can buy TDR and build, which is what I did in one of my projects, because they removed 1.5 flats. I said, that's ridiculous. So I bought equivalent amount of TDR and I built it.
So what is TDR?
TDR is transfer of development rights. Now let us say for road widening, BBMP wants to acquire some land, say 10 feet from your property, but they don't have the funds. So they give you a certificate. It's called transfer. So the owner gets that certificate, say for 10 feet by 100 feet, 1000 square feet TDR he gets. And it is zone wise also. If he gets it in A zone, he can sell it in A zone. And it progressively relaxes as you go to B and C, and the reverse also. If you buy in C zone, it's obviously cheaper there, outskirt. When you come to A zone, you have to pay the registration fee for A zone for that 1000 square feet. If you sell it to the builder at whatever price, when you register it, you have to register it at the value obtaining in A zone where you are building now.
Interesting. So how do I find, if I have TDR, how do I find someone to sell it to? Is there some sort of an exchange?
You just go to BBMP or BDA, all those guys will tell you, you tell them you want to buy TDR, there will be 10 people waiting there.
You want to sell TDR, you just go give it to them and then...
but don't give it to them because they manipulate that. They'll use the same TDR for 2-3 projects.
Oh wow, that also happens. So how do builders, like you said, it's not very well enforced, FSI is not very well enforced, but that is changing now with RERA.
No? See, RERA is only for... The law is only for those who follow it. RERA is only for those developers who subscribe to. Of course, now anybody who's doing a building where he intends to sell the flat of more than 4 flats has to come and register under RERA.
Yeah.
But I don't think that's happening. Because if you see many areas in Bangalore, they've on a small plot, as 50 by 80, they'll build 6-7 floors, they'll build 10,
Yes.
12,
Yes.
4-5 flats per floor, and their FSI is 4, 5, 6 and all. They get away with it. Once you pay tax, it's legalized. So government, BBMP wants tax, so they collect the money and become sort of pseudo-legality is given to them.
Lot of corruption basically
Corruption
involved,
is the-
which is also why they don't want to possibly change the FSI.
So if they had a regulation, but then now they've started this khatas. Before you sell, the whole building is divided into the number of flats. Each flat will get a khata.
Okay.
You can only register that khata. So you cannot build more units and register. So those will not have any title. That's a good way.
Okay.
But there are many people who don't ignore it. They somehow get away. I don't know how it happened. Most of India is dichotomous. Law is followed by educated people, and many others are also educated people. They flout the rules.
Yeah. So what are the alternatives to FSI?
As I said, FSI is good for maybe commercial buildings. Because, commercial buildings, every 100, one person will occupy about 100 square feet or 150.
But why even have FSI for commercial?
Actually, you don't need.
Yeah.
If your infrastructure is there, you can say you can build this much. Finally, it boils down to intensity of land use, isn't it? Infrastructure and intensity of land use are connected umbilically, right?
Yeah.
So you can't, depending on the infrastructure, you should be allowed to build. Or if you have future plans to change the infrastructure, you can give more FSI because they're going to change the infrastructure. I mean, the roads can be widened also. If you acquire property, you can make roads wider, metro connection and so on, water supply, electricity. These are the 3/4 main things. See, only 35% of the population lives in Indian cities. It's going to touch maybe 40 odd 45% by 2050. We are still a long way away from many countries where only 10%, 8% live in rural areas.
Yes, yes, absolutely.
So there's a huge potential for Indian cities to grow, and they must form regulations to address the issues which will happen in 2050, from now to 2050.
Yeah. So any further solutions on how we can handle, any closing thoughts?
See, basically I feel all Indian cities over say 1 million, because we are a big, densely populated country, must have its urban renewal authority. See, the BDA is shackled by its own rules. They can only develop layouts. Anybody can do layouts.
Yeah.
They must be given, for instance, high-tech city they had planned in Sarjapur was shot down by the court because they said you don't have the authority to do high-tech cities. They must be allowed to do commercial, comprehensive, industrial, okay, if you have a separate KID, they have so many other organizations dealing with industrial. But commercial, residential, entertainment and so on and so forth, all must be planned right from the beginning. Now they are doing only layouts, and one property will be alienated for BDA complex. It's a wasteful exercise because that BDA complex will be full of touts and all sorts of shady things happen there. Nobody wants to go there. There'll be palm stains on the staircase. It's a mess. So they should have maybe a big land. Supposing you're developing 100 acres, give 20 acres, auction it to developers for commercial or something. Provided you do the planning, it should be located correctly in that 100 acres.
See, labor is always a key challenge, right, in any construction project. So how would you compare the labor availability, the skills?
There's no comparison.
In India and versus...
There is no comparison because productivity in the Southeast Asian country is way, way ahead of India.
Okay. Can you give an example? Like actually,
I'll tell you a very simple thing. It's a small example. In those days, to do tiling, say, our bathroom, we would pay the subcontractor just 60 cents. That is about 1 rupee 50 paise per square foot.
Okay.
And his income in those days was close to 40-50 ringgit, which is 200 rupees.
200 rupees. Yeah.
So at 150, he'd have to do 150 square feet.
Right.
Productivity is much higher.
Right.
Here we pay 18 rupees, mason's salary is 750, so 50 square feet, 40 square feet.
Right.
So it's 3-4 times the productivity.
Wow. So how do you think that can be overcome in terms of, is there any solution for
I
that?
think, see,
or it's
basically most of these people, Southeast Asian people, are skilled. They don't waste time. They're very focused on their work.
Right.
There are no, see, if you see a work here, public work, there'll be 1 or 2 guys doing the work. There'll be 4 guys looking down, seeing what he's doing. There, you don't even find that. You don't find any supervisor. The mason knows what is do. Closest in India would be Kerala. In the old days, not now. I did a couple of projects there in the early 90s.
Interesting.
The productivity was very high. You don't have to supervise anything. They'll do the mason knows what is to be done.
Right.
So there's a big difference.
That makes a big difference in terms of time. Like you said, you built 760 apartments in the space of 6 months, you said?
9 months.
9 months.
Including setting up the plant.
That's truly phenomenal. Yeah. So, so that was one thing which I wanted to talk about, the differences in the construction technology, the differences
even
in
countries like Indonesia.
How about the quality wise? Because, okay, one is the quantity that they're churning out like apartments.
Quality is excellent.
Okay.
See, basically the Chinese and the Southeast Asians are very productive. That is a big difference. We have a lot to learn from them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Even one carpenter and his helper will fix 6 doors. Here, if they fix 2 doors, it's quite a lot.
6 doors per day, you mean?
Yeah, per day.
Per day.
And so the rates are also cheap. So labor productivity affects entire industries, right?
Right. So, and this is across the organizations you're seeing this trend, or it's limited only
everywhere, throughout.
Right.
That's why Malaysia is one of the biggest exporters of electronics and all that.
Okay.
Vietnam now.
Right.
Thailand.
Right.
To some extent, Indonesia.
Okay. Right. I think that also accounts for their infrastructure being at a far superior
Malaysia.
level.
There's no comparison between Malaysia, Singapore, and India. There's no comparison at all. Malaysia.
How many years do you think it will take us to actually get to?
I don't think we've reached the level of what Malaysia was in '82.
Okay. In terms of infrastructure, in terms of
you have something like the metro, which they didn't have at that time.
Okay.
But the road infrastructure, the flyovers, the bridges, they do very fast and excellent quality. We have not come near
so
them.
Where is it that we are lacking, and where is it that we can actually improve?
Productivity. See, finally, the per capita productivity is the underpinning of entire wealth creation.
Right.
Which is very poor here. See, women in workforce, very poor. Even Muslim countries like Indonesia and Malaysia have many more women working.
Okay.
Much more women working in the
But we talk about demographic dividend and how that will, actually be an asset to the country.
We may just miss the bus because I don't think we are creating enough jobs, quite frankly.
Okay.
We need a lot more jobs to be created. See, about 10-12 million people are coming into the workforce every year.
Okay.
Second point is, are the people utilized fully, say even 8 hours a day?
Yeah.
I don't think so.
Right. So I think we'll come to this topic of the urban sprawl, which is something that I think you had wanted to express some thoughts on that.
See, basically, there is one yardstick which we use, which many of these countries don't really use, which is FSI for residential development.
Okay.
They use intensity of land use as the yardstick. Okay. Intensity of land use is used because your infrastructure provision is a function of the intensity of land use. That means how many people are going to live there.
Got it.
Okay. In 1 acre, say.
Yeah.
So here FSI is completely opposite of that. FSI is used mainly only for commercial buildings.
Right.
The reason they use FSI is when they designate a place as residential, the government doesn't provide infrastructure, isn't it? They color up area yellow, say residential, big areas. Right. They say it's residential, but the developer has to do everything else. He has to see where the water has to come from, where the garbage has to be disposed, where the sewage will go. There is no sewage in most of these areas. There is no water.
Right.
So they just leave it to the private developers. There they provide the infrastructure. So because they provide the infrastructure, they must know what sort of infrastructure to provide, which can only be gleaned by density, by
Okay.
intensity of land use.
Right.
They will allow even 800,000 people per acre.
Right.
So they have a very simple yardstick. 4-bedroom is 4 people. It's 4-bedroom is 6 people. 3-bedroom is 5 people. 2-bedroom is.
So the assumptions that they make, is it?
They
when
make
when they
to
are planning?
calculate the density per acre.
Okay.
So supposing you have 10,000 square feet and they say they'll allow 100 people from that 10,000 people. So you can build basically divided by 20 apartments.
Okay.
They are not bothered about the size. That's a market driven, sizing depends on where you're building.
Right.
It's economics, right?
Correct.
You can't build very small flats in Koramangala and very big flats somewhere else. Depending on the area, that's a market thing. But
So demand supply equation.
basically, it's what number of kitchens. We also had some yardstick. BDA had that number of kitchens per acre. So when they did villas, they would say 10, 60-40 sides, or 9 or 12 in that region.
Yeah.
So it was designed for only 12 units, which means about 60 people.
Right.
Now 6 apartments have come up on the 60 by 40. Your intensity has gone up 6 times. You have to change the sewage lines, take care of the traffic, take care of the electricity. Everything has to be changed.
Right. Right.
So if you go by density, which is immutable for a span, say 30 years or 50 years, then you have another plan. They say we'll have to increase because of crowding, and we don't follow those.
So it's not scientific, is what you're saying.
It's not at all scientific. See, for instance, the most pricey area in Bangalore would be, Commercial Street and its surroundings, Ibrahim Street, Bamboo Bazaar.
Yeah.
But if you see the profile, it is low rise, grossly expensive in the ground floor, suddenly it drops.
Right.
So that's where the Urban Renewal Authority has to come in.
Okay. Okay. What do you mean by that?
All these big cities over 1 million should necessarily have a renewal authority.
Okay.
Like you
over
have,
1 million in population, you mean, right?
Sorry?
Oh,
yeah,
sorry.
1 million people. Yeah.
People.
Because there will be so many old areas which are badly managed. Basically, it's land management, right? And the powers are with the government and the legislature.
Right.
FSI is a small instrument to needle builders and, bestow favors to those you want to and so on.
Yeah.
But if it is density and it is marked clearly on the CDP,
Right.
that's it. It is fixed, right? Here they don't fix that.
Right.
And there's something called TDR, which I feel is not a very good solution.
It's going to make a comeback.
It is only a cash generating thing. So if you give these agencies, if they can collect enough cash, you don't need TDR.
Right.
You can acquire the land, right?
And you also had some thoughts about the whole parking issue, right? Because I think it was in the paper this morning as well, wherein the High Court was telling the government to sort of get its act together in terms of sorting out these pavements, because there's absolute lack of any proper pavements to walk.
No pavements at all. You can't walk even 100 meters from your house, any side.
So is stack parking a viable solution, you think?
No. Stack parking is one solution. It's not a great solution, I feel. But there are ways of controlling that parking. See, one is, first of all, we take great pride in saying that we are the 4th largest manufacturer of motor cars. But do you have the infrastructure? We don't have. They do export now, some of Hyundai and all that. But much of it is used. 3 million cars are used here in India. Right. Now, what is the infrastructure just cannot take these vehicles. You have to build much more infrastructure. Another thing is to control the number of cars by being judicious about who buys a car.
Okay.
Maybe you can issue to each individual over 21 one license. You charge for that separately as a deposit, and he is allowed to buy one car. Okay. So that will restrict ownership to some extent.
Right.
Secondly, you will find many houses have a normal house for 5 people will have 4 cars.
Yeah.
They'll park 2 cars in their garage. Rest will be parked on the pavements.
On the outside,
Who owns the pavements? The BBMP, right? They're wasting their money. They're allowing somebody to ride roughshod over them by allowing them to park without charging.
Right.
So, like you have, they couldn't stop alcohol sales, right? So, they introduced drunken driving, which discouraged excessive drinking and so on.
Okay.
So, you must bring out something like that. And the best thing is, now we have these fast tags, you have electronic surveillance. If you put a SIM card in every vehicle, they can monitor.
Okay.
you have designated different areas, different zones with different rates of parking.
Okay.
Any vehicle which is parked automatically sends a signal.
Right.
If it's parked for more than 3-4 minutes, your clock starts ticking.
Right.
You can develop an app for that, and they have to pay just like in FASTag, they have to pay. You don't need many people to supervise this because it will be surprise checks. And if it's fine, it will be a heavy fine.
Right.
So you see, if you go, say, for Ooty Chocolate Road,
Yeah.
half the vehicles are parked on the pavements because the houses don't have enough space.
Right.
So fundamentally, before you sell a vehicle, you must assure that they have a parking space. That is fundamental. This is what they follow in some country.
Right.
I think that should be introduced.
There's a
here.
concept of congestion tax, I think, in London.
Everywhere.
If you want to drive to the city, you have to pay a toll and only then you can drive into
That
the
is
city.
if your
right?
car is not full.
Yeah.
If it's a 5-seater, it must have at least 4 people. Singapore also has that.
Okay.
In the CBD area, if you don't have 4 people, they'll fine you per person missing, they'll charge you something.
Right, right.
It's logic, no? See, a car requires about 7 meters by 3 meters of road space.
Right.
And it's one person going there. It's ridiculous.
Correct.
It's not economics.
Not economically.
Whereas a sedgeway
Yeah.
on the proper pavement is much more scientific because he's occupying only that much space.
Only 1 or 2 meters maximum. Yeah. But when you think like a city like Bangalore, I think the only ideal long-term solution is a metro, right? And that's proven to be true across the world.
See, it's like this.
Right.
It
So
is not
what are
any
your
one
thoughts on
solution which is a cure-all. It is a combination of different
Right,
systems.
right.
I personally support Shiv Kumar's idea of a circular tunnel around the city.
Okay.
The reason is all big decisions are based on aesthetics, not on economics. Singapore went for the tunnel, entire thing, and metro.
Right.
Except in outskirts, they raise it over the ground because of aesthetics. It's like your human body, no?
Yeah.
You see the connection between infrastructure and your body, arteries, this and bypass and so on and so forth. They're similar, but it's all hidden
Right.
for aesthetic purposes.
Right. Right.
So aesthetics must dictate. In fact, I once had a conversation with somebody in the metro. I said, from Baipanahalli to MG Road, why didn't they put it underground? And he said, sir, have you been to the legislative assembly? They didn't even discuss it. They said it's too expensive, put it overhead.
Right.
It's an eyesore forever.
Yeah. That whole MG Road Boulevard was actually the
So
pride of
parking,
Bangalore, right?
there are some things like parking. Stack parking is much more visual, right?
Right.
It is less aesthetic. It should be preferably underground. See, at 20 by 30, they don't have parking, but all the cars are parked there only because they want to go to the shop.
Right.
So if this clock starts ticking that they have to pay, it will discourage them. Slowly, people will be weaned away from that addiction of 20 by 30 sites.
So I think the new norms are now 750 square feet per car park, right? In a commercial building. That's what the norms are.
Every
So
500 square feet,
okay, it's been made
you need one car park. But I think that is subject to different types of commercial buildings. You can't have the same thing for a shopping center
Right.
or a mall.
Right.
For an office building, yes, it may work, but not for a mall and all. They have far more. But we are still stuck in some old norms.
Right.
It won't work.
Right, right. So how do you see the metro playing out, let's say in Bangalore? They've already extended it to
That's a
all
very
the
good
major,
thing. See,
outskirt
metro is
regions.
basically most people who use metros all over the world use it for going to work. It's not a leisure activity. And it's faster, right? No traffic jams and so on.
Yeah.
If you take your car, you'll get stuck in. Cars are for leisure. Say going out in the evenings and so on. So not everybody will go out at the same time. It will not be crowded. So that's more sensible. So they must extend the metro network. But there are other secondary systems like last mile connectivity.
Right,
Now pavements play a very important role in that last mile connectivity.
right, right.
If you have a station for 2 kilometers around that, anybody can walk. It'll take 15-20 minutes, right? But there are no pavements. So people prefer to take that vehicle, get a drop, or take their scooter, find somewhere to park, or take an auto or a cab or something. So if they address this pavement issue, which is linked directly to car parks, because cars are parked, scooters are parked, everything is parked on the pavement and you can't walk.
You can't walk, yeah.
And one of the reasons why this happens is there's no money in pavements, if I may say so.
Yeah,
Roads
please
get
feel free.
tarred every year. There is a strong revenue model
Right.
for those powers that be. Right.
Right.
Pavements, one done for 10 years, they ignore it. So money and corruption are also part and parcel of this.
Yeah, I think unfortunately, but that's the case. I think across the country, whichever metro you go to,
There are some.
you have this common problem, right? The traffic problem, the congestion problem,
Bangalore's
infrastructure.
the
So
worst.
these are
Bangalore. See, for now Delhi has less cars than Bangalore, but their infrastructure is twice as much.
Okay.
So
Right.
where are we?
Right.
That brings into question how cities should be run.
Yeah.
I personally believe 1 million. I keep saying that. What happens is policies when a government comes into power are made for the larger area of the state.
Okay.
Which is the villages. 70%, 65% live in villages.
Still there,
So they form policies to please them. The city gets ignored on these sort of issues. So it's usually the tail wagging the dog. Because there's more money in the city
Yeah.
to line pockets.
Correct.
But votes come from the hinterland.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So what's the solution like next 50 years? What's your vision for
I
Bangalore
have
and-
personally, I have an idea that any city over 1 million should be independent of the state it is in.
Okay.
And that city, if it wants to expand, must buy land from the farmers around and pay the market price.
Right.
You cannot have an intermediate agency like BDA with unlimited powers riding roughshod over farmers, compensating them something and all.
Right.
And it's a short-term thing. They'll sell the land. If they get 4 sites out of 10 or something now, they'll sell it, blow up the money, won't know what to do. You must think ahead and see whether they can be absorbed into the mainstream of economics.
Right. So which of
Which
the
is happening in
locations,
Pune.
Right. So is this happening in let's say, like I said, Southeast Asian countries and all? How is it planned over there? Because
See, most
those also
developed
are major
countries
centers
don't.
of commerce, right?
Most
Singapore,
developed countries don't
Hong
have
Kong.
these issues. They've already overcome that. They have very strict planning.
So how do
rules.
they overcome it? Is my question. So.
Their population growth was not like us.
Okay.
They had a more or less stable population.
Yeah.
But still, countries like Canada and New Zealand have huge housing problems.
Right.
Because they're so strict on the planning modalities, not enough land is released for development.
Okay.
Here it's a free for all.
Yeah, and here I think we have in excess of 10 million, right? Bangalore alone has.
I think Greater Bangalore is 15 million.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, lots of learning.
The Urban Renewal Authority, if it has a corpus, say $5 billion, they can acquire parts. BDA Metro can acquire any land they want, right, for their use. My house can be acquired if the BDA deems it for a larger public good.
Okay.
So, if you have a corpus, if they have a corpus, they can start acquiring some land. See, FSI is in their hands. Forget the FSI. Raise it to 10, let us say. Build a building. Of course, you can't have, these timber merchants there. You must zone it properly. But you could also have some timber merchants. There's no problem.
Right.
Build a building, shift them there without disturbing their livelihood. That is very important. For the sake of public good, you mustn't destroy a private individual's earnings. That's what happens here.
Correct.
They say you sacrifice for the larger good. He has to feed his family. That's the larger good in itself.
Yeah.
So, development must take care of the people it displaces as much as it is intended for somebody else.
Right. This concept of unlimited FSI. So in Hyderabad, for example, you have unlimited FSI.
Yeah, I don't know how
But
they
interestingly, all the major metros, I was just reading a report, have shown a decline in the inventory levels of the past 3 years. Like available inventory for sale, let's say
After
apartments. After COVID, Hyderabad has remained the same. Right, the unsold inventory, as they say,
That means
it's
supply
remained
is
at 48 months of inventory. Right, so Bangalore was at around 40 months, now it's down to 10 months. Similar with Delhi, it was at around 35 months, now it's down to 8 months. Hyderabad has remained at 48 months inventory unsold.
There is oversupply. There is oversupply.
So FSI restrictions are good in a way, right, to curtail the supply.
Not FSI, density. FSI is meaningless. That's why they have unsold flats. That's a national loss.
Right.
If you build so many flats and they're empty, it's a huge national loss. It should be optimized, right?
Right.
So density per acre, depending on the infrastructure you're capable of providing, is a nice balance between supply and demand.
Right. So that's a key question. Does the tail
Because in the
wag the
heart
dog?
of town, for instance, in Malaysia, in the heart of town, they allow 800 people per acre. That means you can build 160 apartments. It can be
160 apartments.
3-bedroom apartments.
In how big?
1 acre.
In 1 acre.
Because the density allowed is 800.
Okay.
Divided by 5 is 160 apartments, 3-bedroom. You can build 800 square feet, 3-bedroom. They are not bothered. Or 3,000 square feet, 3-bedroom. They are not bothered. They will give you only 160 strata titles. What they say khata here.
Okay.
E-khatas now, no? So the number of kitchens are restricted. That is the way of controlling the number of units. But here they control the area of the flat also.
Right.
Which I feel, because since they are not providing any infrastructure, I don't see any point in having all these.
So you're saying in the city have more dense
cities are by nature pyramidal.
Yeah.
Center of the city is the most valuable. That's the highest density.
Here
you see Bamboo Bazaar is this way. There are multi-storied buildings in the periphery of the city, and Bamboo Bazaar, Commercial Street, Ibrahim Sahib Street are all low-rise.
Yeah.
Socially not very good either.
Right.
Shivaji Nagar, all those areas. So they should redevelop that into high-end commercial.
That's happening also, right? As
not
time
really,
goes
because
by.
you don't have an urban renewal authority. No, they are specialized in tackling these problems.
Right. Any parting thoughts you'd like to share on these topics in terms of parking issues, urban renewal?
There are so many issues. It has to come from government. See, the think tank is usually in Delhi. Most of these are, consequence of actions in parliament, right? You start every city must have metro. It's a decision taken somewhere else, and then they supply us funds and so on. The metro network, the underground network of roads are very important. Finally, we don't want to see, when you go on the road, only on underside of metro stations, right? Very ugly.
Yeah.
If it was just roads, pavements, tree-lined avenues, it's so much more pleasant, and all the traffic is underground. In Singapore, even shopping malls are connected by the metro.
Okay.
Many shopping malls have stations.
Right.
In Bangkok, they have done a wonderful thing. They have the metro. They have a walkway in between the ground and that.
Yeah.
And that goes straight into shopping malls. So people can walk.
Correct.
Here you can't walk.
Right.
So the density of cars and vehicles on the roads is much more.
Right.
Because you can't walk even 1 kilometer.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing your
Thank you very much for
inputs, especially on these very current topics and challenges that the cities face, right? Like I mentioned, it's across the country. Every city that's growing has these sort of challenges. So it's, I think, left to the authorities to, hear us out, hear visionaries like Ravi sir out in terms of his ideas to decongest, his ideas to renew cities and make it more habitable and pleasant for people to live in. So
that is the final. Finally, whatever economic level you reach, you must live in a very conducive, pleasant, healthy environment.
That's the end
goal. And for that, pavements are important. If everybody walks 2 kilometers or 4 kilometers a day, I'm sure your health costs will come down.
Right.
Hi, I'm Sapna. Hope you enjoyed the session. In this series, we'll be talking about 3 broad areas: real estate as an investment, prop tech, and business building in general. We also run an annual event called Propathon, and our sessions from Propathon this year are also part of this podcast series. If you enjoyed the session, please do like, share, and subscribe. If you have any comments, anything you would like to hear about, please do leave it in the comment box below.